The Minnesota Vikings go on the road to take on the Houston Texans on Sunday in a game that's interesting for a number of different reasons. First, the playoff implications. The Vikings have won 2 in a row. They're now 8-6. If the season ended today, they would be the final wild card team in the NFC, so they would make the playoffs. But if they lose on Sunday, it's going to be very tough for them. Not only are they going to have to beat the Green Bay Packers in Week 17, which is going to be difficult in itself, they need a lot of other help as well. So big game for the Minnesota Vikings, really a must-win if they want to make the playoffs. Big game for Houston as well. Houston needs to win either this week or next week on the road in Indianapolis to lock up home field throughout the AFC playoffs. Now, if the Texans do lock up home field, in my mind, they're the favorites in the AFC. Going to be very tough for any team, including Denver or New England, to go into Houston and beat this team in the postseason, I think. Houston, a well-rounded team. Obviously, they're 12-2, third in the league in points scored, 7th in points allowed. But they've shown vulnerability in the secondary over the last couple of months. However, Minnesota is last in the NFL in pass yards per game, so they're not really well equipped to attack that Houston secondary. Christian Ponder has been brutal over the last couple of months. Really, if you're the Vikings or a Vikings fan now, the best you can expect from Christian Ponder, the best you can hope for, is about what he gave you last week. 131 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. As long as he doesn't turn the ball over and lose the game for you, really, you're happy with Christian Ponder right now. And if he does turn the ball over in this game, it could get ugly. Houston's a 9.5-point favorite here on BETDAQ. 45 is the total. But as long as Ponder can protect the ball, and he was able to protect the ball last week against a ball-hawking St. Louis Rams defense, I like Minnesota's chances of keeping it close here. You know, Houston, even though they've played well, and played well all year really, they haven't played quite as well over the last month and a half as they did the first month and a half of the season. They did cover last week against the Indianapolis Colts. I was happy to see that because I was backing them, but they were sort of fortunate to get that cover. They didn't show the type of explosiveness on offense that they had early in the season, and I was a little surprised because the Indianapolis Colts are soft on defense. Minnesota has been playing good defense recently. Top half of the league in points allowed. They're better on defense than the Indianapolis Colts. So something tells me Houston's going to be held below 30 points in this game as long as Christian Ponder can hang on to the ball. And I like Minnesota's chances of covering here. But the other reason this game is interesting is because Adrian Peterson, the Vikings All-Pro running back, the best running back in the NFL, is only 294 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season NFL rushing record. Remember, Dickerson went for 2,105 yards, I believe, in 1984. So that record stood for nearly 30 years. It's a big deal. And Peterson, as we said, needs to average 147 yards per game over his last 2 games. He's 294 yards away. It's going to be tough for him this week. Houston, an excellent run defense, 5th in the NFL in rush yards allowed, 93.4 yards per game. But you know what? The Rams had a good rush defense too last week. The Rams were stacking the box. They knew what was coming. As we said, Christian Ponder only threw for 131 yards, but they could not hold Peterson below 200 yards. Peterson has it rolling right now. It's remarkable considering just a year ago he tore his ACL and MCL in his knee. A lot of people thought he would never be the same. Turns out he is better than ever. And I expect him to have another big game this week. I like Peterson's chances to break the record just because he's talked a lot about it. I think the Vikings are going to try to feed him the ball. They're going to try to get him the record. And by the way, they're offering that bet on BETDAQ. And last I checked, I know the odds are fluid, but last I checked, if you like yes, as I do, if you like the over 2,105 yards, it's a pretty good price. You might want to check that out. But hey, it's not going to be easy this week. Expect Houston to stack the box. They're going to see 8-man fronts for the whole game. And Houston, as we mentioned, does have an excellent rush defense. But I wouldn't bet against Adrian Peterson right now. And I'm not sure I'd bet against the Minnesota Vikings this week, at least unless you're going to bet on the money line. I do like Houston on the money line. I think the Texans are going to win this game. But 9.5 is a big number. Tough to cover a number like that in the NFL. And something tells me it's too big a number this week to give a Minnesota Vikings team that's been playing good football lately.